Hi, Chris Reed, Realtor here out of Pensacola, Florida. So there's been a topic that's popped up again in our East Hill neighborhood, one of our downtown, more historic neighborhoods, that has revolved around the demolition of some of our historic older homes. And I wanted to take a minute to just kind of chat it out as to what's happening in our area and where the city is with things and what options might be available to protect some of these homes and really talk about why is this happening. So in the last 20 years or so, I think we've found a real increase in new construction in our area. People have, especially in the last 10 years or so, there has been a real increase in new construction, which has been a good thing because we have a housing shortage, so that's not a bad thing. And new construction does tend to be very efficient. You're going to have the lowest utility bills, the best insulation, new pipes, new wiring, everything with new construction really, is gonna have a long lifespan for new homeowners. The efficiency is there, and the cost of maintaining and owning a newer home is lower than that of an older home. There was a trend that we had about 20 years ago where people were really getting into the older homes, renovating them, fixing them up, and really loving on them. It was a beautiful time, a beautiful trend. And as a historic property specialist, I love seeing people buy the older homes and fix them up, renovate them, maybe do some modernizing and, bring them up to speed, take some of the functional obsolescence out of them and put a new twist on them. Maybe add some bathrooms, maybe break down some walls and have the aesthetic of the older home, the quality of construction of an older home, but with a modern twist. Who doesn't like high ceilings and the classic materials like brick floors, brick walls, or exposed brick chimneys, hardwood floors, and beautiful wide moldings. There's some classic materials like marble and brick and hardwood that have really stand the test of time, and we actually see a lot of that in the newer construction. A lot of the new construction has subway tile, that dates back 100 years ago. So, it's nice to see the newer construction. It's also nice to see some of these older homes getting renovated. But what we're finding is that a lot of the older homes in our East Hill and downtown neighborhoods are getting torn down, and new construction's being built, and people are getting upset about it, because part of the reason why we like our older neighborhoods is because of the old architecture and the aesthetic and the style, the character, the uniqueness of some of the older homes that that we really don't always match with today's new construction. New construction today tends to have a lot of it tends to have the same style about it, and it can be a little predictable with the layouts. So people are getting a little upset that some of the older homes are being torn down. Some of the large lots that these homes sit on are getting divided, and so in some cases 2 homes, even three or 4 homes may be put on a piece of property that originally had only 1 home on them. So the density is increasing, and it's understandable. People don't always like to see change. They like things to stay the same. Sometimes the deconstruction of these older homes is warranted. Sometimes it may feel like not, and sometimes it's hard to weed through and what when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. For example, we have a house in East Hill right now that is scheduled for demolition, and boy, it's getting some attention. The reason why it's getting attention is that it's a beautiful 2-story, older home with a great curb appeal, big chunky columns. The landscaping's all, azaleas and live oaks. It really has a feel of a bygone era. When you look at it from the curb, you can't imagine there being anything wrong with the house. It's beautiful. It's a gorgeous home, very stately, sits prominently on the piece of land, and the idea of it getting torn down is heartbreaking. And the idea of, maybe 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 homes being built in its place, and, with very small setbacks, and, houses that may not have a lot of differentiation between them. It's hard to imagine, hard to want to think about that. And so there's a lot of talk, a lot of opinions, a lot of public outcry about this specific piece of property that is scheduled for demo, and a lot of outcry to the city. The city should be doing something. We need to prevent this from happening. Yada yada. So what I do know about the property is that it's been in the same family for a very long time. I believe it's been sitting vacant, and so it hasn't been, from what I understand, extremely well maintained. It may have some structural issues. It may have some termite damage. Systems in the house, in any house, has a lifespan. Electrical, plumbing, it all has a lifespan. People don't really think about our electrical systems or plumbing systems in houses expiring, but they really do. They have, about 80 years life in them, and then they need to be replaced, if not sooner. So this particular house, I believe, was built in the 1940s. And it looks like it's older than that, has that appeal about it. I had not been in it, but I had seen pictures of it, and beautiful murals in the stairwell. Just a classic appeal about it. Wide baseboards and moldings and hardwood doors and all the things you like to think of in the older home. But the owners, the property owners, they really have every right to do what they want to with the property. They can sell it to whomever they want. In this case, a developer, a very well-known, very well-respected contractor who builds very nice quality homes in our area, is in the process of buying the property. And then what they plan to do is to, from what I understand, build one home and then divide the lot and then have a couple of other homes built. And they have every right to do that. The city really can't stop them from doing that. I don't really think this city or the government can tell you what you can and cannot do with your property. And we do have property rights and ownership rights in our country. That's one of the things that makes us a great country, is our ability to own, and individuals can own property and do with it as they see fit, as long as it's up to the zoning, city zoning or county zoning, city or county codes for health and safety. People can really do what they want to, and they should have the right to do that. On the other hand, yes, it is upsetting to see a historic property, especially one with an aesthetic that is such a landmark that you drive by, you see every day when you drive up and down, the 12th Avenue right through the center of East Hill. It's upsetting to see something like that get torn down, or, it's symbolic of a bygone era. It's, the way we think life should be. I mean, so many reasons. And these are the types of homes that make up a beautiful neighborhood, and one of the reasons why we love our East Hill neighborhood is because of homes like this. So to see that dwindled down, or to see that at jeopardy, it is quite upsetting. So, I can see both sides. I am a historic property specialist. I have lived in and renovated many, many old homes. I have designed and built my what I call my new old home, which was a new home that was built with classic materials. It took all the things that I loved about some of the houses I had lived in and loved and put them into a new home. So I'm definitely an appreciator of the older homes, architectural design. But at the same time, I do know that newer construction is efficient. It's more affordable in that utility costs are lower, insurance costs are lower. Will new construction stand the test of time the way some of the older construction has? That'll be determined. There are things like the construction of a roof in today's world is, heck, it's some of the things aren't as well done as they would have been 100 years ago. We use plywood now, and big sheets of plywood instead of 6-inch or tongue and groove that has more nails and more solid tightly grained wood. So you can't buy the lumber, you can't replace the lumber in the older construction. Some of the lumber is so petrified that the termites don't like it, they can't bite into it. So will some of the newer homes stand as well as some of the older homes have? Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Maybe not. Some probably will, some probably won't. But we do have, the city can only do what they can do with the current zoning that they have. They can delay demolition of a structure 60 days to see if another solution can come about. If somebody wants to resell it or sell it to somebody else, or but really it's the city doesn't have the right to tell somebody they can't do what they want to with their property or demolish the house that they own if they want to. So one thing that some of our other neighborhoods have done has been to develop a historic overlay. We have our old North Hill neighborhood and our old East Hill neighborhood downtown that the property owners have come together and they have formed neighborhood associations, and they have formed their own mapped area as to what they want to see as their preservation area. Applications had been made with Florida Trust for Historic Preservation, and then the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation makes application with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and then you can have a historic neighborhood. What does that do? Well, the trust, it doesn't tell you what you can and cannot do with your property, but they do give guidelines as to what they recommend, what's historic, what a city can then use with their architectural review board as a guideline to protect some of the older structures and the old aesthetic. North Hill and Old East Hill has an architectural review board with the city. So if you have, say you want to install a new fence, or you want to replace your windows, you want to change the siding on your house, you want to redo your landscaping, you want to paint the exterior or put a new roof on it, anything that involves the outside of the house, you need to file application with the architectural review board in these neighborhoods, and you then can get approval or not to make the changes that you'd like to see. And it is another step in a permitting process. It does help to keep an consistent aesthetic in a neighborhood. It's very much in style keeping. It keeps things from becoming an eyesore. For example, in the historic neighborhoods, you can't have an air conditioning unit hanging out your window. So you can't have a window unit, so you don't see the box in your window. You can't do that. So there's like requirements, you to keep an aesthetic, to keep up appearances, to keep consistency in a neighborhood. And in the neighborhoods, you definitely have a pride of ownership. You definitely, you're either in the neighborhood or you're not in the neighborhood. You may be on the line of a neighborhood. But, I think generally speaking, it keeps your property values up, keeps the aesthetic without having a mandatory homeowners association. So these neighborhoods have the districting of a historic neighborhood. They have voluntary homeowners association membership. So you're not required to be a member of the homeowners association. But if you do buy a property or own a property in the district, you're going to be within that district. And some of the other things to think about is properties within a district might also be registered as a historic place on the National Registry. But when people go into these things, they really need to keep eyes wide open, because there's advantages and disadvantages to every one of these situations. For example, one thing that somebody might not think about is, you may be limited with your insurance options. Some insurance carriers may not want to insure, or they may have certain requirements on a building that has a historic designation, like a specific registration for that specific property, not necessarily just in the neighborhood. So you do need to kind of make sure that no matter what direction you go in, or no matter where you build or buy your house, that you know what options you may or may not have when doing so. One of the reasons why people do like East Hill is because things aren't cookie cutter. There's lots of different architectural designs. You don't have to go through the city to get approval for certain things, like your landscaping, or the style fence that you want to. Height requirements. How far you go into the ground, and concrete and rebar and all that kind of stuff. Sure. All certain codes for all that. But as far as the aesthetic, you choose what you want to do. Plant what you want to plant. Paint whatever color you want to paint. Put in whatever kind of windows you want to put in. So all things to consider. None of this is that black and white. There was a really good example of this in the East Pensacola Heights neighborhood recently, where there was a house for sale. The owners inherited the estate. They lived out of state. They hadn't been to the house in years, maybe decades. And the house had fallen in complete disrepair. The house was built in the 80s. Really didn't have much of an aesthetic appeal. Had a great lot. My gosh, what a great lot with a great view. Nice piece of land. But the house itself really didn't offer much in the way of aesthetic appeal. It really wasn't all that attractive. But people were really trying to look at it. Is there a way to save the house? Can we salvage the house? Is there something that we can do with the layout? Is there something that can be done with this? House is 1980s style. Rooms were small. Ceilings were low. It was infested with all kinds of creatures and mildews, all kind of nastiness. You had to sign a waiver just to go inside to look at it. That tells you something. And anyway, people tried to figure out a way to deal with it. Well, it ended up getting sold for quite a lot of money. And the house was torn down. And now, it's hard to see even a 1980s house. Hard to see a house being torn down. It's amazing how quickly they come down. They take all this time and energy to erect, and they stand for decades and decades and have all this life and family and stories and history and all this, and then boom, 1 day, 2 days, boom, it's rubble, it's down. It's like scary how fast it can come down. Put in containers and hauled away, and off to the landfill it goes, right? But I'll tell you, I walked by that piece of property today. It's level, view is open, it's airy. You know, all the vines and things that had consumed the house. I mean, the house was taken over by nature. I mean, nature was reclaiming that house. It was disintegrating before your eyes. Real eyesore for the whole neighborhood. You know, you'd walk by it and you just shook your head and what is the story? There's a story there. And it was, you know, hard to see it in disrepair. Well, the people that bought it, they're a young couple in town. They're going to make plans, drafting plans. Going to take their time with it. They're going to build design the house of their dreams. They're going to build a beautiful home for their family, their children. It'll probably be a home that their children's children will visit, and it'll be a really beautiful home that then will be admired, and in decades from now, people will be looking at it. Hopefully it won't be dilapidated. People will be like, I can't believe that house is gonna get torn down, and we go again. But anyway, just all good food for thought. I don't know what the right answer is. It is hard to see the older homes being torn down, but having lived in 200-year-old houses myself and worked on them and loved on them, and having also designed and built a brand new home, working with homes every day, whether they're in our old East Hill neighborhood or new construction, working with builders and contractors and everything in between. I have an appreciation for both, and I think both have their place, and I can see both sides, and I do believe in property ownership rights. And that, if we could rely on people making good decisions with their property, that would be a really nice thing. Anyway, that's just Chris Reed here, sharing some of my thoughts. Feel free to give me a jingle. I'd always love to talk to you. Follow me on Facebook for the most up-to-date real estate information. Follow me on my new YouTube channel, Chris Reed Real Estate Pensacola, for all things real estate. Chris Reed signing out. Hope you have a great evening. Take care.